What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we're checking out VAVA's 4K ultra short throw laser projector. Now, I actually had the chance to check this behemoth out at CES earlier this year, and when I mentioned to the folks at VAVA that I'd be interested in spending some more time with it, they were super kind and sent this one over for me to borrow for a couple of weeks. I've been using it pretty much every day since I got it, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. So hopefully I can provide you guys with enough insight and information if you're in the market for something like this yourself. And if you are interested in learning more about it, or maybe you want to buy one for yourself, I'll have some links down below to where you can find this projector on Amazon, so check down there so you don't miss out. I will say that unlike the handful of other projectors I've reviewed on my channel that I've incorporated in my ever-changing bedroom setup, this thing is on an entirely different level for a couple of reasons. Right off the bat, the price for this projector seems super intimidating. At least at the time of filming this video, it retails for right around $2,800, and that's many times more expensive than any other projector I've featured so far on the channel. But if you're somewhat familiar with the ultra short throw 4K projector space, you'll realize right away that that price point is about half as much as some other 4K laser projectors currently on the market. So while I don't necessarily want to use the term cheap or budget, I will call it a more affordable option for those of you looking at these specific kinds of projectors. To start things off, let's talk about what exactly this thing is and what all you get for that price. In the simplest terms, it's an all-in-one projector with built-in speakers. It's a laser projector, so no lamps to worry about, and it's an ultra short throw projector, which means you set it up right in front of the wall you want to have the projection on, rather than having it set up a few dozen feet away. Size-wise, the VAVA projector is fairly large, but the form factor is comparable to any other kind of short throw laser projector you'll find from any other brand. It's about 21 inches across, 14.5 inches deep, and a bit more than 4 inches tall. It also weighs almost 24 pounds. And when you're thinking about how you're going to incorporate this projector into your living room or bedroom or theater setup, you should absolutely do some measuring ahead of time. To give you an idea, the way I have this set up is on my dresser. It's an IKEA Malm dresser, and you can see the projector itself does take up quite a lot of space. And it's positioned a bit more than 6 inches away from the wall. From that distance, I'm getting a screen size of around 100 inches, measuring corner to corner. If you have more space, you can project up to a 150-inch screen or go as small as 80 inches. For me personally, since I don't have a fixed screen size and I'm just using a blank wall, where I positioned the projector wasn't a huge concern for me. But if you do have a dedicated projector screen or limited space on a TV stand, for example, you may want to double check those measurements and positioning options to ensure that something like this makes sense in your space. Around back, you've got a decent selection of connection options, including 3 HDMI inputs, USB, audio in and out, optical, and an Ethernet port. Though the VAVA projector is Wi-Fi enabled, so you don't necessarily have to hardwire anything. And there are some important HDMI settings that I want to talk about in a minute that you want to make sure you find and enable in order to get the most out of your viewing experience. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a laser projector, and the light source is located towards the front center of the unit. VAVA claims up to 25,000 hours of lamp life, which is pretty solid, so theoretically you could be using this projector for a few hours every single day and not have to worry about it dying out for a decade or more. What's also nice is that the projector has this auto sensing feature where if you get too close to the laser, it'll quickly shut off to protect you from accidentally looking into it and causing yourself some eye damage. It does cast a pretty wide array of light, but walking near it isn't going to be a problem. It's mostly when you're fiddling around with the cables or leaning over it when you might cross into the actual beam if it's on. Physically, there's not a whole lot more to say about the projector itself. You've got a main power button up front you can utilize. There are some vents on either side for airflow, and I'll talk about the noise in just a moment. But the big thing is that what most of this projector is actually a really solid speaker setup. You've got a pair of Harman Kardon 30-watt speakers with Dolby Atmos support, And to be honest, I wasn't really expecting a whole lot here, especially for home theater setups. It's more than likely you'll have your own dedicated audio setup anyway, but actually you can easily get away with just utilizing the built-in sound here with this projector. I was surprised with what VAVA was able to deliver, particularly when it comes to that booming bass and thunderous thud that really is critical for like action movies. It's a great sounding setup overall. My only gripe would be that it doesn't get as loud as what you might want for a true theater experience, but that's something I can look past, all things considered. Here are some audio samples so you can get an idea.
Me, I don't have that problem. Me, I always tell the truth, even when I lie.
Now, in regards to the fan noise, this is something that I think is going to be a matter of personal preference. For me, I thought the VAVA projector was quiet enough, especially since just the built-in speaker setup alone could mask it pretty well. And here's sort of what that fan noise sounds like if you can catch it. Now, there's sort of two different noises going on, a low hum coupled with a high-pitched whine. And I think if anything, that higher-pitched sound is what maybe some people will notice more. Now, I actually didn't get it every single time I used the projector, which was a little odd. I don't know what triggers it, and like I said, overall for me, I could live with the noise. It was subtle, even in a quiet room, and basically silenced by the built-in speakers. But I've seen some other people's reviews online mention it, and I wanted to make sure I brought it up in my review as well. I don't find the fan noise to be an issue at all for me personally, and I was perfectly content with it while I was watching movies or TV shows on the projector. One last thing before we get into the actual picture quality. The projector does ship with a pretty decent remote. You'll use it for volume and input controls, obviously, as well as navigating the settings and other menus, and it works flawlessly. I do wish it was backlit, especially considering the price of this whole setup, but overall, it's a solid little remote that feels like it's connected to something pricey, which is good since it is. Okay, so let's get into the important stuff now, the picture quality. VAVA advertises this projector as a 4K UHD device with HDR10 support. But you should understand that the 4K distinction, at least, comes with a bit of a caveat. The actual DLP 4K UHD DMD chip has a resolution of 1920 by 1080, which is obviously not 4K, but VAVA uses 4-phase pixel shifting technology to upscale the image and quadruple the resolution to 3840 by 2160. So in the end, you're still getting the 8 million pixels that qualify it as a 4K image, but it isn't quite as sharp as a true 4K projector with a native 4K chip. However, the image produced by the VAVA projector, I think, is still fantastic. One important thing I want to mention, sort of hidden in the settings, are your HDMI CEC and HDMI 2.0 toggles, which are off by default. It's sort of strange, but you'll want to make sure those options are enabled to ensure you're getting the most out of whatever input source you're using. The actual interface for this projector is fairly easy to navigate and pretty clean. You've got a sort of picture-in-picture input preview, which is nice, and you'll also find an Aptoide TV app store built in. Now, the projector runs a bit outdated Android 7.1, and while you have the opportunity to take advantage of some streaming services and apps, I found a handful of the ones I wanted to try, like Netflix and YouTube, were not supported, unfortunately. Realistically though, I think most people will be sticking with a dedicated HDMI device like a Fire TV stick, NVIDIA Shield, Xbox One X, or even a plain old cable box to get the content they want onto the projector. As far as the image settings, you have some control. With brightness, you have basically just two options, standard and high, which for whatever reason, if you change to high, it doesn't save when you turn the projector off. but I found standard brightness to be perfectly fine anyway, even in less than ideal lighting conditions. You also have some more precise image adjustments you can make, but my biggest frustration with these is the fact that you can't have your input source playing while you're adjusting the parameters, so you don't know how it really looks until you flip back. I guess both fortunately and unfortunately, not only did the standard mode look great as it was, the rest of the modes to me didn't seem to drastically alter the image anyway. So on one hand, I don't think you'll have to do much adjusting, but if you're picky about color, you may not have the robust controls you want. The rest of the adjustments as far as keystone and focus are all basically automatic when you set the projector up for the first time, so there's no need to really change anything there. But you'll likely want to ensure that the HDR option is at least set to automatic or enabled. Now, I do think the image produced by VAVA's projector here is really solid. In general, you've got great clarity and a ton of detail from the really bright laser source. And while daylight viewing is a bit difficult, having dim lights on at least isn't an issue at all. I think overall the color balance is right. You don't lose a whole lot of detail in super dark or super bright scenes. And honestly, this is the sort of thing I think looks way better in person than on camera. It's really an exceptional image that may fall short still in comparison to true native 4K UHD projectors, but it can still easily compete, especially at this price point. When it comes to HDR support, I think this is probably the only area where the VAVA projector lags behind. By itself, the HDR picture is mostly fine, if not a bit underwhelming, but compared to even a standard 1080p image, you lose a bit of color and detail, and overall, it just doesn't give you that great looking picture you might expect. It's not bad by any means, but if you're buying this projector specifically for its HDR support, I think there are probably better options out there. And just as a note, when it comes to gaming, this projector has more than 100 milliseconds of input lag, which makes most games difficult, if not unplayable. This isn't out of the ordinary for a USF 4K projector though, and it shouldn't be a negative specific to the VAVA. I don't know any 4K USF projectors out right now that have a respectable input lag for gaming. And if you're looking for a projector specifically for that reason, there are standard projector options out there, like BenQ's gaming projector, for example, that I recently reviewed, which are tailored specifically for that. So all in all, I think if you're looking for an all-in-one ultra short throw 4K projector, VAVA has a really solid option here. While you don't get a native 4K chipset, you get a picture that looks fantastic anyway, at a price point that's 2/3 or even half of what you might pay elsewhere. $2,800 is still a lot of money, I know that. And this is actually VAVA's first attempt at a product like this, so I can understand if you're a bit wary, but I personally have no issue recommending this thing for a living room or home theater setup. Paired with your own audio setup, I think you can still get away with spending under $3,000 total for the entire setup, and if you're content with the built-in Harman Kardon speakers anyway, which I think a lot of folks will be, you've got yourself a heck of a rig. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of VAVA's 4K projector in the comments down below. Also, be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.